So we've now had about 3 days of testimony in the first ASR case to go to trial. It's the case of Lauren Kransky. And there's been two witnesses who have been very interesting from the standpoint of the plaintiff's case. The first was an individual who was in charge of the testing of the ASR before it was put on the market. And the testimony was very interesting. It was established that that individual had almost no knowledge or expertise in the area of testing medical devices. The individual who was in charge of the testing protocols was actually an ex-engineer for a brake manufacturing company. And he was in charge of making sure the ASR was safe and effective before it was released to the public. The other thing that was interesting in the testimony was exactly how little testing was done on the device. It was never tested in humans. And one of the big issues in these hips, and it's been drawn out in this case, is the angle of the cup is critical. DePuy in their instructions have indicated that the cups, which are the part that the ball goes into, should be installed in the patient at a 45-degree angle. But during the testimony, it was conceded that not all doctors can put these hips in at 45 degrees. There's a lot of variance between patients, and it's well recognized that doctors don't always hit that 45-degree angle. And it's critical because all of the studies have shown that the steeper the angle of the cup, the more wear and tear you have on that cup. So what was interesting about the testimony was that when DePuy tested the hip, even in their machine, they only tested it at the ideal angle, 45 degrees. They never tried any variances, and that was really pointed out as being a fundamental flaw. It was also conceded by the DePuy executive that they never established any kind of range of acceptable limits. So, for example, they never put in their instructions or determined in any way what the maximum angle was or what the minimum angle should be. All the instructions said were 45 degrees, and that was the angle that they told the doctors to put it in at. And what this really does is it goes a long way to defeating DePuy's anticipated defense that Lauren Kransky's doctor was actually responsible for the problems that he had with the hip by putting it in at too steep an angle. And during opening, the defense implied that they were going to make that defense. Yesterday we had some very interesting testimony from the head of DePuy's marketing department. And this was the vice president of marketing at the time the ASR was released to the public. His name is Mr. Ekdahl. And Mr. Ekdahl was intimately involved in all of the issues surrounding the ASR, and was really responsible for most of the marketing, and was involved in the issues to try and deal with problems with the hip when they arose. What's notable about Mr. Ekdahl is that he has now become, after this whole debacle, he has now become the CEO of DePuy Orthopedics, despite all these problems and the role he played in those problems. During the testimony, based on what I observed, I would describe Mr. Ekdahl as very evasive. He was asked on multiple occasions whether the ASR was recalled for safety reasons. And despite being asked this question multiple times, he just simply refused to answer. So over the next few days, what we expect is there's going to be some more testimony from DePuy executives, and we will also hear from Mr. Kransky, his doctors, and his family about his condition and what he went through with this hip. And we will do our best to report on that once that testimony comes in.